During the coronavirus stay-at-home period, I've worked on a number of interesting projects around our country home. I'm going to show you video snippets of some of the things that I've worked on. As a result of the coronavirus, COVID-19, we decided to put two of our little bunnies out on the top of posts at the end of our driveway to greet passerbyers. We have people walking by, we have people walking with their dogs, we have joggers going by, people jogging with their dogs, we have bikers pedaling back and forth, and we also have cars and trucks coming by. And I'm surprised at the number of them that will actually stop here on the road and pull out their cell phone and take a shot of these two characters. The bunnies' names are Kip and Thorn. This is Kip and that's Thorn. And the name Kip Thorne is the name of one of the three people who won the Nobel Prize in physics for the detection of gravitational waves. So we have Kip and we have Thorne in honor of that particular person. These bunnies are very happy with the fact that our Vice President, Mike Pence, has a bunny in his house. Mike Pence and his wife, Karen, live at the U.S. Naval Observatory in the quarters for the Vice President, and their bunny's name is Marlon Bundo. Marlon Bundo. Their bunny's is also known by the name POTUS, just as we have the acronym POTUS for President of the United States, P-O-T-U-S, President of the United P-O-T-U-S, President of the United States. We have the acronym BOTUS, B-O-T-U-S, Bunny of the United States. When these guys aren't out here on the post, they spend a lot of time watching reruns of Star Trek. They like all the different Star Trek shows. They particularly like the ones in which you get to see a lot of the Vulcans and the Romulans. And the reason they like watching the Romulans and the Vulcans is because of the longer ears those characters have. Come on, sit, sit, sit. Good boy. Very good boy. Very good boy. Don't move. Very good boy. Be still. Don't move. Go! There you go. Yay, good boy. Good boy. Come on. Come on. Sit. Good boy. Sit. Don't move. Come here. Come on. Come here. Come here. Come on. Sit. 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 Good boy. Good boy. Sit. Don't move. Very good boy. Go! Yay! Come on over here. Come on. Mike. Sit. Sit. Good boy. Sit. Sit. Oh yeah, we'll shake hands. Yeah. Very good boy. Sit. Be good. Very good boy. Sit still. Don't move. Very good boy. Very good boy. Go! Yay! Come here. Micah. Come on. Come here. Come on. Over here. Come on. Sit. 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 Good boy. Good boy. Very good boy. Don't move. Very good boy. Go! Yay! Come on, come on, come on, come on, Mike, come on. Good boy. Good boy. Very good boy. With the coronavirus shutdown hanging over our heads, I wasn't sure if we were going to be able to go out and buy tomato plants. We like planting tomato plants in our garden every year, and since I wasn't sure we could get plants, what I decided to do this year was to order some seeds, and I made up a frame to hold cups. This is a foam material that you can get at Home Depot. It's about 1.5 inches thick. I have 2 layers here. The first layer, what I did was I spaced out where I wanted to have my cups, and I drilled the holes using the kind of bit that you would use if you were, for example, going to drill a hole in a wooden door to put in a lock. So I have my cup holes, then I glued the two pieces together. That's what you see here. Right now I have these heating lamps. I'm trying to get the seeds to germinate, to start to grow. As a result of the coronavirus, COVID-19 pandemic, epidemic, I decided to go up into the attic and bring out my old HO gauge, HO scale train platform on a 4x8 sheet of plywood. I made this about 30 years ago for kids, and it's been sitting up in the attic carefully wrapped up for 25 years, and I was glad to see that when I unwrapped it, everything looked pretty good. Here's a closer up view. I got a bit of a rat nest of a wiring set up. I'll hide that once I get things set up better. And you can see the trestle with the bridge and the track going around. And I do have a mountain I made. I'm not sure how I'm going to use that yet. I may or may not use it. We're now 3 weeks after the seeds were planted. Our tomato plants are growing very nicely. Once we saw a little green and said, "Hello, green," we took away the red heat lamps, and we now have regular white lamps. We also take the plants outside when the day is nice so they can get some real sunlight. This is my 1970 Chevelle. It's an SS 396, Super Sport 396. During the coronavirus, COVID-19 pandemic, epidemic, I'm going to be working on this a little bit more than usual. It's so nice to open the hood on the vehicle and see an engine instead of a lot of plastic just sort of foaming out at you. One of the first things I'll be doing during the stay-at-home period is I'm going to replace the master cylinder, the brake master. That's the brake master cylinder. Here's my new one. So this is the old master brake cylinder that I'm going to replace, and I just can't say how pleasant it is to be able to look at an engine without all plastic all over the place and see everything that's associated with the engine. It's a beautiful engine. It's a beautiful car. It's been a real pleasure setting up the train platform during the coronavirus stay-at-home period. And I have the transformers hooked up now, so I have power on the tracks. And I have 4 steam locomotives and 1 diesel, and we'll run them. So to find the planet Venus in the daytime, I use this 6-inch refracting telescope on an equatorial mount. I have the mount roughly aligned with the Earth's axis of rotation. I have an eye-safe solar filter on the front of the telescope, and I also have an eye-safe solar filter on the finder. Once I get the sun in the eyepiece, I then use the setting circles to set the coordinate for the sun for today. I do that on the right ascension axis, and I do that on the declination axis. So I'm all set up. I have the sun centered. Then once I have the sun centered and have those coordinates set, here I'll show you what the sun looks like in the eyepiece. Again with the eye-safe solar filters. There's the sun. There's the sun. So at this point, again, I have the right ascension circle set with the coordinates for the sun, and the declination circle set, the sun centered, and I have its coordinates. The next thing I will do is I will move the telescope so that the coordinates will be for the planet Venus on the right ascension axis and on the declination axis. And then at this point, since I'm far away from the sun, I can remove the solar filter on both the main tube and on the finder. So I've removed the solar filter so I can see the planet Venus. I'm far enough away from the sun. I don't have to worry about looking at the sun now. Eye safe at this point is not an issue. I'm far from the sun. I've also removed the filter off of the finder. I will look through the finder and I will see the planet Venus. I will then adjust the telescope a little to get Venus right on the crosshairs in the finder, and when it's on the crosshairs in the finder, I'll look through the main eyepiece of the telescope and I will see the planet Venus as you will see now. Okay, so we followed a few simple steps to get the telescope pointed to Venus, and now we're going to look into the eyepiece and see the planet Venus. You can see the crescent phase of it. I got it focused about as best as I can, but there's the crescent phase of Venus. Alright, we have now changed the eyepiece. It's a shorter focal length eyepiece. It should make the image of Venus a little larger, almost a factor of 2. Normally this time of the year I'd be out doing some fishing, but because of the coronavirus, my favorite lakes, I won't be going to them for a while. So I decided to come down to our pond and do a little fishing in our pond. That's a fish. That's a fish. That is a nice bass. Look at the size of that guy. Look at how big his mouth is. That is a nice bass. Beautiful. Largemouth bass. Back he goes. So this is the bait. This is the lure that I caught that nice bass on. It's a Rapala, and it dives to 3 feet. And the pond isn't much over 3 foot in depth. A couple places maybe 4 foot. So that's the baby that caught him. I always have had good luck with these kinds of lures that have blue color tone. So here we are, fishing in the pond. We'd like to be out fishing in a lake somewheres, but because of the coronavirus, stay at home, lockdown thing, lockout, lockdown, I fish in the pond and caught a nice fish. The HO train platform is now operational. We have one outside track that goes all the way around, mostly on the outside of the platform, and it does have a switch part here. I got a boxcar parked there now, so that can be switched in and out. And then we have a figure 8 that goes across a trestle and a bridge, goes down around, comes back up, and finishes the figure 8. Inside the figure 8 on this one end we have another track, and we have to be a little careful with that one because they do cross right there, and we'll show you an example of a collision just for the fun of it. And then inside each of the parts of the figure 8 we have a circular track, and down the other end we have another circular track that goes around the mountain. We tried to have like a summer setup on this end and then moving more towards fall, and down this end is a winter scene with the mountain and a tower that actually works. This is a close-up view of where the two tracks cross. You can see one going that way and the other one going this way. This side here comes across the trestles and the bridge, so we have to be careful of a collision right there. So we just have to watch the timing of the trains. That's where we gotta watch for the collision. nice to see what our grandchildren have to say to Grandpa about our HO train platform. As a result of the stay-at-home instructions during the coronavirus pandemic, I've taken the time to cut down some of the dead ash trees that were killed by the emerald borer, and then I cut the pieces up into logs to fit into our wood stove, and I split them. So we have a nice little wood pile here, and we have a bigger pile out in the back. We have the garden looks pretty good now. We've got the tomato plants tied up. You can see some of our spinach and our lettuce, and of course the beans and peas in the back with the zucchini in the back. And over here we have more beans, and we have 3 rows of corn. One row is going to be knee-high by the 4th of July. The other one will probably just make that, and the third one will be up later. Here we are, June 1st, 2020, and we're going to try taking a look at the moon through the telescope. Okay, there we are, the moon. This is the same setup with the telescope that I used for showing you Venus in the daytime. There it is with just the camera. The moon image I just showed you was just for show and tell. I'm simply taking the camera that I'm using right now, and I just hold it right up against the eyepiece to show you what the moon looks like through the telescope at low power. Now normally when I would be using the telescope to look at the moon, I would be using much higher power to see the finer detail in the moon's surface. During the coronavirus stay-at-home period, I find myself using my telescopes more and more at night. I also use my telescopes to look at the planets, especially Saturn and Jupiter, and Mars. Mars is my favorite, and Mars is going to be close to us in October of 2020. I also use my telescopes for looking at deep sky objects, galaxies and nebula. And the next photograph shows you an example of the different scopes that I use to make those observations. This is Chet and this is Huntley. They are named after a real person named Chet Huntley. Both Chet and Hunt helped me make the videos you just saw. And Chet Huntley, the real guy, he was a NBC News reporter from about 1956 to 1970. He was a remarkably good news reporter. During the coronavirus stay-at-home order, I also continued working on a number of videos to be on the web soon, science videos, including one in which I describe a program on how to make setting circles for telescopes. I'll show you a picture now of the types of setting circles that program makes. It is hard to buy setting circles today. Most amateur astronomers probably think that traditional setting circles, like the ones I just showed you, have gone the way of the dinosaur, but I like them. The coronavirus stay-at-home period has been a period to reminisce the important events of my life, including the day I was married. One of my most favorite wedding pictures, I'll show you in a second. It shows my wife and I getting into my 72 Olds Delta 88 just after the wedding. In the background you can see our friends, Ann Littman and Stella Sparks. And then behind them is my Uncle Terry. Then my mother in a very nice pink dress. And then my Aunt Eleanor. And in the background is my cousin Kenny. The fellow with the red hair is Kenny. My mother said I and my wife, or maybe it's me and my wife, but I and my wife reminded her of my dad and her when they got married nearly 39 years ago. My mother-in-law said I looked like Sean Connery when he played 007 James Bond. Today happens to be June 6th, 2020. It is the 76th anniversary of D-Day in World War II. It is also the 40th anniversary of my PhD physics thesis defense at the State University of New York at Albany. My graduation ceremony occurred a couple months later in August, and the next picture was taken right after the ceremony. It shows me on the right, my PhD thesis advisor, Professor Harold Story, in the middle, and next to him on the left is Professor Marvin Pryor. He happens to be my thesis advisor's thesis advisor, and so Professor Pryor, I guess you could say he is my grand advisor. Professor Pryor was our physics department emeritus, and so here is the picture. I loved my graduate years, despite the fact that they were very difficult and challenging. And what made it really interesting were the great folks that were at the university. That included our physics chairman, Professor Walt Gibson, and a real genius in mechanics, Professor Inomata. And there were also a number of other great professors such as Corbett, Doss, Chi, Scholes, Roth, Schultz, and Professor Keith Radcliffe with his really remarkable quantum theory of collision course and his equally rewarding and remarkable relativistic quantum mechanics course. They were both very difficult but very rewarding. Now this year, 2020, is also the 50th anniversary of when I was in the Republic of Vietnam. I am using the coronavirus stay-at-home period to write up a text on my experiences in the Republic of Vietnam. I was a DoD federal worker at the time. I volunteered to go to Vietnam on a special project for the commander of Naval Forces Vietnam, Vice Admiral King. And I was there in May, June, and July of 1970. The next photograph shows me at the Army's 1st Air Cavalry base in a village named Phuc Vinh, which was located southeast of the Cambodian border. Here's the picture of me. You can see a Huey helicopter in the background in one of the revetments. When I look at that picture, I find it hard to believe I was once so young. In the Republic of Vietnam, we were issued GI clothing, and the shirt that I was wearing in that picture is like one of the ones that I saved from Vietnam, like this one. And you can see on the shoulder here is the patch for the 1st Air Cavalry. They are the Army folks that we lived with and worked with when we were in the Republic of Vietnam. Drawing the virus, I've been working on a number of texts, including the one that I've been working on in Vietnam and another one on gravitational waves that should be finished in a year or so. One text I worked earlier is finished, and this is a picture of the cover of that text. All these various activities that I showed you about that I've done at home during the coronavirus period fall far short of the normal and enjoyable nature of those activities because of over 100,000 Americans having died from the COVID-19 virus from China. If you are interested, my contact information is in the text, and it's my first name, last name, physics, at alumni.albany.edu. Neither Chet nor I nor Huntley have any deep or profound thoughts about the coronavirus, except to say that it has been a disastrous monster. And with so many Americans having been killed by it, and many people around the world killed by the virus, I can only say how good it is to be alive. Chet, I myself, and Huntley wish you all well. Hope you stay well. And perhaps the best way it can be said is live long and prosper. During the Corona stay-at-home period, I made a number of videos, and I'm going to end. This is an add-on video that I decided to include at the end. This is a new end, and what it is I'm starting off by showing you a scale model of what once was known as Brontosaurus, and you can see Brontosaurus is wearing a mask. And the reason I'm showing this is Brontosaurus, you can look up the new name for it, I like using the old name, always reminded me of the fables about the Loch Ness Monster. If you want to see the Loch Ness Monster, you can go to the Scottish Highlands, go to Loch Ness, good luck in seeing Nessie, the nickname for the Loch Ness Monster. But if you want to see a really nice scale model of Nessie, you can go to an area in the Poconos of Pennsylvania. You can start out at the entrance to Skytop Lodge off of 390, travel north 4 or 5 miles, and on the west side, that'll be on your left side as you're traveling towards Promised Land Lake, you will see a pond or lake with a very nice large scale model of Nessie. Now, we passed Nessie for many, many years on our trips through the Poconos, but recently when we were up there, we saw that whoever takes care of Nessie in that lake off of 390 has a good sense of humor, and they now have Nessie wearing a mask for the coronavirus. I'll show you some pictures of that at the very end here. So if you want to see that area from a Google map, you can go to this address, take a look from the street view, scan around towards the west, and you will see Nessie. Now, in the photographs that I'm going to show you at the very end here of Nessie in the Poconos, you will see Nessie with the mask, and alongside Nessie is a baby Nessie. It's a very interesting view, and it's kind of neat that somebody in the Poconos has done this. So it's something that we're going to end with, and a number of weeks have passed by since we did the first video, and I haven't been able to go out to a haircut, but my daughter here, she gave me an at-home haircut, and I think it looks pretty good.